I've always known about the Hope Diamond, but it didn't mean anything to me because as a child it just didn't. But my cousin, my mother's first cousin, for 2 years was the tutor companion to Mrs. Evelyn Walsh McLean's daughter, Evelyn. And she used to come back and forth on her way to Washington and stop and spend the night with us and talk about it. And it was just all talk then, and she was interesting and fun, but it didn't mean anything to me. I had to learn later really what the Hope Diamond was about. But for these 2 years that my cousin was tutor companion to Evelyn, I thought that was an interesting story. I can't recall any of the details then, but I got them later when I interviewed her. And I only saw the Hope Diamond in the Smithsonian about 2-3 years ago, and I was absolutely fascinated because it was more personal to me because I had heard the stories of my cousin living with it for 2 years and living with the family and experiencing the life of the ultra rich, and it was just a very different experience that I had.
While you were just talking, I was thinking that your cousin is the only person I've really heard of that has survived handling the Hope Diamond.
But she did not handle it. She did not touch the Hope Diamond. The curse was touching the Hope Diamond, and she knew that, and she was quite definite in her ideas. And she handled it, as far as I know, one time when Ms. McLean, she wore it all the time, and one time she came to dinner and did not have it on, and she asked Catherine to get it for her, and Catherine went upstairs and the maid got it for her, and she carried it by the last diamond on the chain. Of course, all the chain is diamond, and she carried it away from her as far as she could and walked down the stairs and handed it to Ms. McLean. She wasn't about to touch that cursed stone.
And since Miss McLean wore it every day.
All the time. She was never without it. And she had just forgotten that one time to put it on. But with anything she wore, she always wore the Hope Diamond. And well, it was just part of her.
Yeah. Do you think that that's why she's so cursed for such a long period of time?
Well, you know, the legend is the curse of the Hope Diamond. The tragedy happens to anyone who owns it or touches it, and she had a sad life as far as I'm concerned. Her husband, who was a profligate, owned the Washington Post, one of the most eminent newspapers in the world, and his father had owned it, and he lost it through bad management. He ended up in a psychiatric hospital. Their first child died. He actually had epilepsy, and a car ran into him. She had 2 other sons and a daughter. One of her sons' daughters was murdered. The sons had unhappy marriages. Ms. McLean lived in this beautiful mansion and entertained, but and she lived in total fear of Evelyn being kidnapped because Lindbergh's kidnapping had just occurred about 4 years before, and she lived in total fear of it, and that's why my cousin Catherine had to be so on the job all the time. Evelyn never went any place without Catherine except to visit, I think, a couple of daughters of one of the bankers, but Catherine was always with her, and it was no kind of a happy life for a young lady. I believe she was 15 when Catherine went there, and she didn't get to socialize with teenagers. Very few, and I go into that in the article. And this was an interview many years later in which I got all this information. And I really got it for my parents' sake because I knew they would, we got pictures and all the information, and so I thought this would make an interesting story for what was interesting to me, so I wanted to share it.